Hi, guys. Welcome back to the Lash Extension podcast. I'm Erin.
And I'm Tress, and today is going to be fun. We are putting Erin's technical brain to the test, and we are having a pop quiz technical podcast today. I'm super excited about this because I don't know the questions that I'm going to ask, and she doesn't know the answers that she is going to give. And I think that this is going to be wonderful. Erin, how do you feel?
I'm fucking nervous because also you guys, because I also have my caffeine has not kicked in today. So if I'm stumbling over my words, we know why.
It's going to be fine. It's going to be
It's
fine. So
gonna be
this is the
perfect.
first of a series, and Erin is going to pop quiz me back on our next episode. We are going to cap this at 30 minutes so that our brains don't explode from trying to figure out what's coming next. And it should be pretty fun. So you should learn a lot about lash technicality, whether it's like working with lashes themselves or anatomy or retention or whatever. You're going to be able to learn a lot, but also this is sort of like pop quiz game show style, and I'm very excited.
This is so candid. I'm so excited.
Well, we've gotten really great feedback that the unscripted and unoutlined podcasts that we've done, the ones that we just talk on and have absolutely zero plan, are the ones that really get a lot of responses from our listeners. So
Yeah.
we
And
just
the ones
decided
like
to run
that's
with
those are
it.
the type of podcasts that I like to listen to too, are the ones that are not scripted and they're totally on the
Mm-hmm.
spot. So yeah, I'm excited. Let's go,
So
baby.
today I'm
Also,
putting you on the spot.
yeah, we should also mention like we have not prepared questions at all. We decided that we were gonna do this like 3 minutes ago. Like 2 minutes before we hit start, we decided that we were gonna do this. So it is absolutely unplanned.
Whether it was a good idea or a bad idea, thank you for being along for the ride.
I'm excited.
Okay,
Okay.
are we ready?
Ready.
Are you ready, Erin?
See? I'm kind of ready.
Okay, I'm gonna
I
go.
hope
I
I'm
have a
ready.
question in my head.
Okay,
For a
ready.
beginner lash artist, I'm gonna ask two parts of this question. For a
Mhm.
beginner lash artist, what do you think is the most important part of the eye or bodily anatomy that they need to be well versed in?
Mm, that's a really good question. And I feel like there's a two-part answer for that for me. The first thing that I would say is you obviously need to understand the lash structure and the lash line, the follicle, the follicular structure, the follicular function, and literally how the hair structure is formulated. Is formed. Um, it's really important for a number of reasons. A, to maintain the health of the natural lash while you're lashing, to understand retention, to understand and diagnose any damage that could be happening and avoid any damage that could be happening to the client's eyes. The other part to that answer is that I think it's less talked about understanding the ocular surface of the actual eyeball itself. Um, that's kind of an optometrist study that I think is a gap in our industry that I'm actually working on creating a course for that. And I'm not plugging that at all because I've been working on that for forever. And it's so effing much. And I'm certainly not an optometrist myself, but I think that there should be a lot more study about ocular surface in our industry because literally we're working on an organ that we only get two of. And the ocular surface is at such risk with the services that we're doing, especially a lot of the new technologies that are coming out, like UV, for example, the adhesive fumes that we're working with so close to the ocular surface. And if you don't know what I'm talking about with the ocular surface, I'm literally talking about the eyeball itself underneath the eyelid. So I'm talking about the pupil. I'm talking about the layers of the surface of the eye that is covering what we see of like the iris, the pupil, the sclera, the white parts of our eyes. We have layers that cover those structures inside of the eyeball itself. And that's a whole topic that I could talk about for a year. But I think that those are the most those are the most not talked about anatomical topics that are missing in our lash industry. The other thing that I think would be really important for lash artists anatomically to understand is what's called the meibomium glands in the eye. And it's literally, there's glands that are inside of your waterline that are, this is going to sound gross, but you know what I'm talking about. We're all adults here. Every time that you blink, it's the meibomium glands are the glands that lubricate the eye. So 9 times out of 10, if there's damage to the lash line. So if you go to an optometrist and you're having issues with your lash extensions and there's damage to your eye from lash extensions, the optometrist is going to study the meibomium glands, and they have really, really expensive special equipment that studies and can take pictures and can look at the meibomium glands on your actual eye. And what's happening the majority of the time is that those meibomium glands, with the fumes and the chemicals of our adhesive and, any chemical burns that are happening, or there's a lot of things that can damage those, but a lot of the time those meibomium glands are burning, or they're essentially being damaged to where there's less meibomium glands lubricating the eye as the eye closes. So that is the main contributor to dry eye. And lash extensions, unfortunately, can sometimes be, when they're applied wrong or they're applied dangerously, they can cause a lot of damage to the meibomium glands. And honestly, I have never heard of anybody in the lash industry explaining the ocular surface from an anatomical perspective like this, even though those are majority of what's being damaged when you're talking from an optometrist perspective on the eye. So that was kind of a long answer, but there's a 2-part answer to that. Oh, you're muted.
I was definitely muted. I was definitely talking.
I
have to say, I'm terribly impressed. I was going to ask what the most important part for a beginner was versus what the most important part for an advanced artist was, but I think you nailed it with that answer for both of them. So that was no longer a 2-part question. It was a 1-part question that you gave like 3 parts to. And I think that's really important. It's one of the things that I love about Erin as an educator and as a lash artist. She is one of the most knowledgeable and technically advanced lash artists that I know. And thank you for such a thorough answer. I think you probably used words that most people have never heard before. So if you need to back it up, like rewind, go back to the things that she was talking about and write them down and start doing some research, because it's really important for you to know these things. Okay, I have question number 2. Are you ready?
Yes, and sorry, my dog just barked. I know that you guys probably just heard that.
It's going to be okay. We're used to it. No worries.
Okay, we're ready.
Okay, question number 2. If a lash artist is struggling with retention and you could only give them 3 tips, what would they be?
Holy crud. Only 3. Okay. The first one would be that you need to check your attachment. I think that's the first and foremost thing that I would say. And what I would say with that, when I say your attachment, a lot of people are just looking they're just looking from the top point of view when they're placing an extension onto a natural lash. So they're not looking from a different angle, checking that they actually have a full attachment to that natural lash. So you can easily check that you actually have a solid attachment if you literally were just to take a 1 or 2 second different point of view from the attachment and the lash that you just placed by just simply looking on the side of that natural lash. So if you were to just change your angle, look from the side, you can see whether that attachment is just if the extension is essentially just sitting on the natural lash rather than actually either wrapping around the natural lash, or if you're a pincher where you have a really solid 2mm contact zone. So I would say, first of all, check your attachments. A lot of times people don't realize that their attachments is really what the issue is. They want to blame everything else. They want to blame their adhesive. They want to blame their products. They want to blame the client. They want to blame oils. They want to blame makeup. They want to blame aftercare in general. They want to blame absolutely everything. But what's really happening is it's essentially the same thing as like tape versus glue. If you were to place if you were to place an extension onto a natural lash with little attachment, it will last by the time the client leaves that that day. So it can falsely give you the impression that they have solid attachments, because while you're brushing them at the end of their service, or for the first day or two of them walking out of your service room, you can brush their lashes and their lashes aren't going to fall off. But within that day or two, or even right after their appointment, that tape is slowly going to start falling off. It's not going to last longer than a day or two. So it could give you, as a lash artist, the false impression that the client is where the issue is happening. The client's aftercare is wrong. They've been picking their lashes, et cetera, et cetera. If you were to just simply look on the side during your or attachments and during the application process, you could probably see that those lashes were just sitting on that natural lash, rather than actually being fully engulfed or fully attached with a solid contact zone. So that would be the first thing that I would say, is really make sure that your attachments are with that 1.5 to 2 millimeter contact zone, and they're actually sitting on the natural lash and fully in contact with that natural lash. The majority of the time that attachments do end up acting like tape, and this is my second answer to that, my second my second tip, is that the glue is actually not curing on the natural lash. So it'll cure halfway while it's still up in the air, while you're going from dipping it into the adhesive to the natural lash. And from that perspective, once you set it on the natural lash, it's going to halfway cure on that natural lash. It's not going to fully cure on that natural lash. So you need to make sure that that adhesive is fully curing on the natural lash. So a lot of people are going to be like, well, how do you do that if we're working with, a 0.5 second, 1 second dry time adhesive? My number one tip that I say inside of all of my courses that we're talking about retention, whether it's a private mentorship, whether it's my Secrets to Retention online course, literally any conversation that I have about retention, the slower that you work, the faster you work. I've always said that. That's like my motto at this point. I should put that on my forehead. To this day, I've been in the lash industry for 7 years, maybe longer. And everybody always wants to know what glue I'm working with. And the thing is, I can work with nearly every adhesive. The one thing that I cannot work with to this day and maintain the type of retention that I post on my page, that all of my clients experience, is I cannot to this day endorse a 0.5 second dry time adhesive for any level of artistry. I would consider myself an advanced lash artist at this point, and I cannot work with a 0.5 second dry time adhesive, nor have I ever been able to. I tried to force myself and force my environment into a place that I could make a 0.5 second dry time work, whether that be, having my temperature be, below 67 degrees, to try to freeze it out, to try to force my environment into a 0.5 second dry time environment. Or I would constantly keep my dehumidifier running. And in Oregon, we have really high humidity. So I would force my room to be below 25% to try to force working with this certain adhesive, because I thought that working with a faster dry time meant that I was more of an advanced lash artist. And I also thought that working with a faster dry time adhesive meant that I could work faster, because that would make sense, right? We're taught, if you're working with a 0.5 second dry time adhesive, that obviously we're going to be able to get through a full set faster or get through a fill faster because our glue's drying faster.
But
That's
what you
not
might end up doing is ditching fans faster.
literally. So for me, even to this day, I prefer a 2 second dry time adhesive, and I can get a fill done in an hour. I can get a full set done in 2 to 2.5 hours. There's always caveat to that. It always depends on retention. It always depends on the density of the natural lashes. There's always, a spectrum there, but I can work faster than the majority of lash artists that I know that are working with 0.5 second dry time adhesives. And I prefer a 2 second dry time adhesive. And you will always get better retention because that glue is actually curing on the natural lash. So that would be my number two answer. That was kind of a big answer for number two. I'm so sorry. And number three, I think that oh gosh. I have to this is so hard. What would number three be? I think that I would say, I think I want to say aftercare. I want to say educating your clients, but I think I'm going to go in a different direction, because I really believe that retention in general is 75% the artist and 25% the client. So I want to put more emphasis on the artist's perspective and like the artist's responsibility in the retention conversation rather than the client. Um, uh, I would say not overloading the natural lash would be really, really important. I think a lot of people, there, okay. When I say not overloading the natural lash, I'm talking about understanding the natural lash line health, being able to identify when damage is occurring, and making sure that those lashes are actually able to hold and sustain the weight that you're putting on them. Whether that's using too much adhesive, whether that's using too large of a diameter for what the natural lash can hold, whether that is, putting too long of a length on your client's lashes, whether that is just in general, traction alopecia or gluing multiple lashes together where there's weight that's going to be added and damage that's going to end up occurring from poor isolation. If you don't know what traction alopecia is, it's literally just gluing multiple lashes together, and then the growth cycle ends up shifting for each different lash that's growing individually, and so you could prematurely pull one of the lashes out. So there's a lot of weight that's added when you're not proactively lashing a natural lash if they cannot hold it. A lot of lash artists want to defensively lash rather than proactively lash. So, what I mean by that is they want to put as large a fans and give the client everything that they want, make it super, super full, and then it'll slowly over time start to get thinner and thinner. Those natural lashes will start to thin. The follicle won't be able to sustain the weight that they're putting on them or the length that they're putting on them. And then there's damage that happens to the natural lashes. And then slowly over time, they're going to have to take a break from that. When it comes to retention, when you're overloading the natural lash with too much weight, those extensions and or the natural lash is going to fall off because it can't sustain that. So retention wise and client retention wise, I'm like gonna dovetail that. Your client should never have to take a break from lash extensions. They simply shouldn't have to take a break from lash extensions. I believe in proactively lashing and not overloading the natural lash in order to sustain both retention and your client's retention. The other thing that I think a lot of lash artists need to understand, I'm going to make this a fourth because it's not really a fourth, but I'm just going to add it in there. Lash serums are not something that every client should be on. And I don't believe that that is something that every lash artist should be relying on to kind of fix the damage that they're putting on their clients' lashes. A lot of people don't realize what lash serums are and how they should really be used in a professional setting. I actually am really not a fan that they sell them commercially personally because I believe that they should be a professional product that we're trained on. When I learned about the actual chemistry of lash serums and how they should be used and what the actual function is and the mechanisms that's happening on the lash line with lash serums, I was actually really surprised to hear how they should be used. So I'll just give you a really quick overview about them. So lash serums, originally how the formula was created, was a glaucoma medication that people with glaucoma were being prescribed a medication from their optometrists that they were realizing a side effect of it was massive lash growth. So with that, they were like, we can commercialize this, we can capitalize on this. So they took the glaucoma medication portion ingredient out of the serum, out of the medication, and they ended up putting it into a bottle and commercializing it and selling it. So what it's doing is it is essentially a steroid for your lash follicles. So your lash follicles begin to rely on that serum for them to grow. So if anybody has ever been on a medication, an SSRI or any sort of pharmaceutical, that your body starts to rely on that medication, you then have to wean yourself off of it in order for your body to continue growing and functioning or producing the chemicals and the hormones to then continue the growth of that. So when you are working with a lash serum, the follicles of your eyes can become very, very codependent on that third party serum that you're putting on the eyes. So when you cold turkey stop it, it can disrupt the hair follicle. It can shock the hair follicle, and you can see a massive lash shed that happens because it literally is shocking the follicle. It's been reliant on that formula, and then it is now not getting what it's reliant on. So it has stopped functioning as well and as much and producing as much hormone, and the follicle producing as much mechanism and function now. So the extension, or so the natural lash ends up shedding. I'm kind of going down a rabbit hole with this, but the other thing about that is that you have to absolutely use it every single day in order for it to work for you. A lot of people don't know that either. So, if you or your clients want to be on a lash serum, if you want to get off of it, you need to wean yourself off of it. So, for the first week, do every other day. For the second week, do every third day, et cetera, week by week until you can slowly wean yourself off of it. The other thing about lash serums is it will make the lashes longer, but it will not make or produce more lash follicles. You will not have more lashes across the lash line, and it doesn't make them stronger. In fact, in a lot of ways, it can make the follicle a little bit weaker, even though the natural lash is getting longer, so it can thin it. A lot of people think that the longer the natural lash is, the more weight and the longer length that you can put on it. So a lot of people will use it kind of as a if you want long lashes, then you have to be on a lash serum, and then I'll put these long lashes on your eyes, right? That's not a long-term way of lashing, and it's certainly not going to be healthy for your client's eyes long-term. So I'm going down that little rabbit hole, just so you guys are aware of how that works too, because I feel like that kind of paired with my last point there.
Okay, so I'm going to sum up. Number 1 is maximize the attachment zone. Number 2 is make sure the adhesive cures fully on the natural lash. Number 3 is making sure that the weight of the lashes aren't too much for the natural lash. And number 4 is don't keep every client on lash serum. That is not what it is for. That is not what it is about. Bonus that I heard in there from you is lash proactively for the natural lash health instead of defensively when the natural lashes are already suffering.
You got it, sister. And yes, I was talking pretty fast. So for the sake of time, I kept looking at the timer and I'm like, oh my gosh, I can only have a couple more minutes. So yes, I talked
I was
fast and
like
I
messaging
apologize.
her and I was like, oh, breathe.
Yeah, I was talking fast. I kept looking at the timer.
I love that. I knew that if I was going to ask you a retention question, though, like it was going to be a while, and I think that's okay. If you don't know, we're talking to the queen of retention. And if you've been with us for a while, you know that she has a retention class online that she won't promote on this podcast usually, but I get to because I'm her friend. And it's the most comprehensive retention course that I know that's out there on the market. And she's fun to watch and listen to. So, like, bonus.
Oh, thank you,
I
friend.
have your next question, Erin.
Okay, hit me with it, baby.
If a lash artist is struggling with making handmade fans of any sort, what are the most important tips you would give them?
Wow. If someone's struggling to make handmade fans of any sort, what would be the tips that I would give them? That is a really good question. Um, First of all, I wanna say that you can be really good at making handmade fans with any technique. You can be a pincher, you can work on the strip, you can work on a little bubble, on the little sticky dot bubble. You can flower bouquet technique, and you can get really amazing fans handmade. I don't personally think that one technique is better than another. Particularly because everybody works differently and everybody can get a similar or identical result with different techniques. So I want to preface that there that I don't have a bias towards one or the other. For me and personally, I flower bouquet technique because that's what works best for me. That's what I have found to be the technique that I can work most efficiently in. And when I'm doing volume with 0.05, 0.06, 0.07 volume diameter lashes, I'll work on the strip because I was originally Russian volume trained. So that's what comes natural to me there. I also know how to pinch, work on the bubble. I know all of the techniques. that being said, I think that the baseline foundation to working with handmade fans, eh, tip wise, God, that's so hard. Tip wise, I think it's to stay consistent. It's to choose which technique you are going to stick with and stick with it. It's going to be transition sometimes if you're going to choose, like for me, for example, working from on the strip with 0.03 diameter lashes to choosing to go to the flower bouquet technique, it was a hard transition, but I committed to making that transition, and I committed to the other technique that I really wanted to um, devote my handmade fans to and my handmade skills to. So I would say that don't allow yourself to continue skipping through the different techniques, because that's only going to slow you down. It's only going to make it harder for you to actually be efficient at one technique. You can know how to do all of the different techniques, and that can be an amazing tool belt for you to build and have skill there for have a technique that you can rely on and fall back on should you need to. But I wouldn't give yourself the option during a fill to switch through 3 or 4 different techniques at a time. That can be really challenging to your speed and to your brain. It can honestly make your career a lot harder than it needs to be. So I would say commit to a certain technique and stick with it. The next thing that I would say, tip wise for handmade fans, is to practice outside of working on your clients. You should practice on your clients too with your new technique, but I would say practice as much as you can and put in as many hours as you can outside of your clients before you are working on your clients. I heard this saying once and I don't know where I got it, and I want to give somebody credit where it's due, but I don't know who it was, so I'm so sorry if it was you. But somebody had told me once that your clients is where you perform. If you're a football player, you practice so that you're better in your game, right? I feel like it's the same thing with handmade fans and creating effective technique and developing muscle memory and motor memory in your hand, is to practice outside of it so that you can perform better during your actual service. On your clients' faces, in my opinion, is not the place to practice. I think that it is a form of practice because it's a form of repetition, but it's not the place that you should just be willy-nilly like throwing wet paper towels at the wall and seeing what sticks. You should be practicing outside of your clients as much as you can, and then on your clients doing your best work, along with warming up in the mornings when you first come in for your appointments. Get your first couple of messy fans out of the way, especially if you're coming back from a vacation or a couple days off. I know that my hand and my motor memory is definitely very rusty in those moments. So my first couple of fans back is really challenging, and they're not pretty. They're not balanced. They're not even necessarily the healthiest fans that I could put on somebody's face. So get those out of the way for the first, 5-10 minutes before your client walks in. Check how your adhesive is working for the day. Adjust your environment with your humidity and your temperature as much as you can before your client comes in. And then once your client arrives, then you're going to be doing your best work on their face. So those would be like the 3 tips that I would give off top for handmade fans.
Love it. So stick to one technique and like work on it until you've got it, like until you're confident with it. Practice as much as you can, not on clients, and get your environment right so that you're not struggling with other things around fan making.
Yes, ma'am.
I really, really like it. That's fantastic. I have one more question for you. We are
Okay.
almost at our 30-minute mark for this pop quiz.
Okay.
What is one single piece of non-technical advice that you would give to an advanced lash artist who's looking to improve upon themselves?
Holy crud. Wow, that is
I
a
know, I'm
loaded,
the
that is
worst, aren't
so
I?
loaded.
I'm
Okay.
the worst.
Oh my gosh.
Okay.
I think that I would answer that by saying an advanced lash artist. It is okay for you to be where you're at. I think that people, when they hear the spectrum and the ladder of like beginner, intermediate, advanced, there starts to create this like psychological effect of like, so what's the next rung after advanced? And that's when people start to get kind of confused on like, so what's the next step now that I've been a lash artist for the XYZ amount, or I have this many clients, or now what? Now what? Now what? Right? Because it's kind of creating a ladder in your mind that you have to constantly be striving for more and more. And in from an advanced lash artist perspective, you don't have to have a next rung. You can stay doing what you're doing and be really fucking good at what you're doing. You don't have to become an Instagram influencer or a salon owner or a brand owner or a brand ambassador or literally do anything else other than be a lash artist and sit with where you are right now. If you want to just chill being an advanced lash artist, I think that you should, because that's an incredible place to be in, and your next step will organically come from your inspired action, sitting from where you feel really confident and really good in. So, from an advanced lash artist perspective, my advice would be stop trying to search for the next rung and trying to get to the next level as fast as you possibly can, because sometimes that's not how that works. And I have fallen victim to that mentality many times in my career, as pretty much every person in this career that I know has also
Right on.
has definitely fallen victim to that mindset of like, so what's next? What's next? What's next? And I think that there's a portion of that that kind of plays into like us being very ambitious business owners and people that want to continue advancing ourselves, want to continue advancing our lives, and staying stagnant can be uncomfortable, especially when you have big goals, right? So I think that some of that's being um, driven by that behind it. But again, I'm just going to reiterate, there doesn't have to be a next. There can be something different. We have a pivot episode that we did before this one that I think we covered this pretty extensively. And pivoting can sometimes look different depending on the person and the situation. But being an advanced lash artist is a great place to be. And your next step, let that come from a place of inspired action rather than a place of hating where you're at right now and needing something different. Like, for example, a lot of people get into becoming an educator because their body hurts, they're tired, they don't want to deal with managing clients anymore, XYZ. And the way that I like to explain that is that you should never become a lash educator from a place of hating where you currently are, for hating doing lashes, right? Because like that doesn't make sense. You should always take your next step and choose your next rung on the ladder from a place of love and admiration and absolutely loving where you currently are and wanting to advance in
Absolutely.
that direction. You should
That's
never
so
take
important.
you should never take a next step based on hating where you currently are or the income amount that you're currently making or whatever the case may be. Always make your next step based on the love of where you currently are and feeding on that type of momentum.
That's so good. I'm going to add to that and then we're going to wrap this up. But I think that if you are in a place where you don't know what your next step is, if you can't find that place of love and inspiration, then you're not ready for your next step yet, and that's okay. You might be in a season of getting really great at doing what you're doing, or you might be in a season of waiting and learning to be patient and letting the process like be the process. But I think that it's really important to note that it's okay if you don't know what your next step is going to be in love or in inspiration. I asked myself at one point in my adult life what my next step was going to be for 2 years. And when I finally came back and I was just like, I think I have the message. I think the message is do what I'm doing and do it well and put my head down and work. And when I finally got that message, and this has happened to me over and over in my life, but like for one period, it was like 2 years of going, what comes next? What's going to come after this? Um, when I finally stopped asking myself that question and like dropped into the now and just focused on what I was doing right now, the answer came. And I think
Mhm.
that we've all probably had those experiences in our life, but I also think that myself included, we all need to be reminded of that. And I'm really thankful that that's the direction you went in that. in with that in, Erin. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah, this was so fun. I love
You
this.
did a great job. Oh, under
Ah,
pressure. I'm
thanks.
next. So stay tuned for the next one.
Guys, I'm gonna
I'm
come in
already
hot.
nervous. I'm already nervous. Oh my god. If I just completely derail and just like start spitting inspiration stuff instead of technical stuff, it's because I froze.
It's because I froze.
It's because I
So
froze. My brain froze.
stay tuned for the next episode. I'm gonna be interviewing Tress on our next episode. We're putting her on the hot seat now. We're gonna switch places. And I think that wraps up today's episode. Do you
I
have
love
anything
it.
else that you want to add?
No, great job.
Awesome. Okay, we love you guys so much, and we will see you on the next episode.
Love you. Bye-bye.